So now we get to some strange things that come up in verse 25 and 26 that have been so twisted, and I want to make sure we cover them quite a bit here. He said, and also I gave them up to laws that were not good and right rulings by which they would not live. And I defiled them by their own gifts as they passed all their firstborn through the fire, so that I might stun them, so that they know that I am Yahweh. Now, there are those out there that I've seen with this Melchizedekian thing. And by the way, there's absolutely a beautiful teaching that I've shared pieces of with you about what it truly means to understand the Melchizedekian priesthood. But there are some teachings out there which are trying to take the book of Hebrews and a bunch of Paul's writings out of context and verses like this to say that what was given in Exodus after the golden calf, that all of that stuff was laws by which that were not good. Laws that were not good. Notice what's happening here. He said, I would disperse them among the Gentiles. Follow the context. I lifted my hand in an oath in those, saying to scatter them among the Gentiles, disperse them throughout the lands, because they did all these bad things, so that they would then be given up to laws that are not good. Go do whatever you want. Those are things that are not good. I release you to do whatever foolishness you want to do. I gave them up. I said, here, I washed my hands. I gave them up. Go do your own foolishness and see how that goes for you. Because you can't say that anything that Yahweh said was right is ever wrong. That goes against what Yahweh says. Yahweh doesn't change. I am Yahweh, I change not. So he didn't give them up and give them laws that were not good and right rulings by which they would not live. No. He said, I'm going to allow you to just do whatever you want. You can't live by that stuff. It doesn't bring life. It's not good stuff. You think it's good. It appears good. But you know what? There's a way that seems right to a man. The way leads to death. That's what he said here. So he says, I let them lead their own way, and that way doesn't lead to life. It leads to death. He says, and I defiled them by their own gifts. In other words, he said, and I allowed them to be. Basically, when he says I defile, he says, I allow or cause. So he says, I allowed them to be defiled by their own gifts and allowed them to pass their children through the fire so that I could wake them up. In other words, let them actually go. And how many times has this happened to you, or you've done this with your own children, where your parent finally says, fine, do it your way. We'll see how that works. And allowed you to do some foolish thing and suffer a consequence so that you would be stunned or shocked to reality to come back and say, okay, I'm so sorry. I was so wrong. That's what Yahweh's talking about here in verse 25 and 26. Let's back that up a little bit by going to Psalm 81. Okay, Tehillim 81. And in verse 12. He says, so I gave them over to their own stubborn heart to walk in their own counsels. Okay, look at the context, by the way. He said, let's see, we'll go up to verse 8. Hear, O my people, let me warn you, O Yisrael, if you would not listen to me. Let there be no strange mighty one among you, and do not bow down to a foreign mighty one. I am Yahweh your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Egypt. Open your mouth wide, and I will fill it. But my people did not listen to my voice, and Israel would not submit to me. So, is this the same wording that we just read in Ezekiel? But now you get more clarity. He says, so I gave them up to their own stubborn heart. That's what he's talking about in verse 25. Not laws he created that weren't good for you. Oh, but there are people out there that will teach that he actually made laws that were no good. So I gave them laws that were no good. Really? I'm sorry, but now he doesn't do anything that is no good. He says, I gave them over to their own stubborn heart to walk in their own counsels, and we know that our own counsels often lead to no good. We have no problem believing that we can lead to no good. He doesn't lead to no good. He says, oh, if my people had listened to me, Israel would walk in my ways. I would subdue their enemies at once and turn my hand against their adversaries. Romans chapter 1. You see, here a little, there a little. You can't just read that line in Ezekiel and not wonder where else is he talking about the same thing. But can we at least agree that the context, if you read the verses leading up to verse 12, is exactly the same context? There's absolutely almost word for word. But he changes it a little bit by saying, I gave them over to their stubborn heart and their own counsels, instead of saying, I gave them laws that were no good. No, I gave them up to do laws that were no good. In other words, I gave them up. You ever like work with somebody and say, okay, fine, I give up. You're on your own. You ever say that? You never said, I give up, you're on your own? That's exactly what Yahweh said. He said, okay, I give up, you're on your own. Because you need to get stunned back to reality. Not I give up because I can't do it, because I'm tired of protecting you and enabling you. I'm going to give you up because it's the only thing that's going to work now is shock treatment. You need to get stunned and shocked back to reality here. That's the wording that you see in Ezekiel 20. Oh, but there are people out there teaching that he gave them laws that were no good. No. That's absurd. And contradicts like 99% of like every verse in Torah. The 1% just doesn't mention it at all, okay? It contradicts everything. Yahweh over and over again saying, I don't change. Everything I do is right and good and proper and perfect. Romans chapter 1 and verse 18. For the wrath of Elohim is revealed from heaven against all wickedness and unrighteousness of men who suppress the truth in unrighteousness, because that which is known of Elohim is manifest among them, for Elohim has manifested it to them. For since the creation of the world has his invisible qualities been clearly seen, being understood from what has been made, both his everlasting power and mightiness, for them to be without excuse, because, although they knew Elohim, they did not esteem him as Elohim, nor gave thanks, but became vain in their reasonings, and their undiscerning heart was darkened. Let's just stop there for a second. Do you see how this is playing out into the same story? Right? They had these reasonings. What's vain mean? It's about me. Reasonings because it was about me. I know, all about me. I want it the way I want it. That's vanity. Lifting yourself up into authority and being sovereign over yourself. These vain reasonings, I know better. I know better than him. I know. And then we spin and say, oh, well, he'll be okay with it because after all, he loves me and he'll let me do whatever I want because I'm a spoiled child and I should be allowed to do whatever I want. I don't think so. He says, these vain reasonings and their undiscerning heart was darkened. So they already had a lack of discernment and it became even darker, meaning that it's harder to see the truth. Claiming to be wise, they became fools and changed the esteem of the incorruptible. The incorruptible. And we're going to say he gave them bad laws. That sounds pretty corrupted to me. The incorruptible Elohim into the likeness of an image of a corruptible man and of birds and of four-footed beasts and of reptiles. Therefore, again, now you see how this is connecting their heart issue and their discernment issue and their reasonings issue to something that sounds like idolatry, right? Images that were made. The same linkage in Ezekiel. He says, who changed the truth, therefore, listen now, therefore Elohim gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts. Sounds the same to me. He gave them up to uncleanness in the lust of their hearts, to disrespect their bodies among themselves, who changed the truth of Elohim into falsehood and worshipped and served what was created rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever and ever. Amen. Because of this, Elohim gave them over to degrading passions. Now, he didn't cause them to have them. He just allowed them to go and do whatever they wanted to do. In other words, he was going to no longer keep putting someone in their face saying, stop doing that. Fine. You want to do that? Have it. Okay? Have at it. You're going to have to learn the lesson the hard way.